The microphone felt ice cold against my trembling palm as I stood before 6,000 people, my voice cutting through the arena like a blade. What she didn't tell you is that she's been hiding this pregnancy for 4 months, specifically waiting for my graduation day to steal my moment. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Patricia's sharp gasp echoing through the sound system. Within minutes, my stepmother would be fleeing the ceremony in tears while the entire arena erupted in chaos. Security rushing the stage, and my father's face turning ashen with the realization that 8 years of family secrets had just been exposed to thousands of strangers. By the end of that day, Patricia would lose her job. My father would be sleeping in a hotel, and I would become an overnight sensation with a viral video titled "Graduate Destroys Manipulative Stepmother at Ceremony." But to understand how 22-year-old Sarah Elizabeth Mitchell found the courage to detonate her entire family structure in the most public way imaginable, you need to know about the 4 years of systematic psychological warfare that led to that microphone moment. Sarah had been dreading this day almost as much as she had been anticipating it. Standing 5'6" with shoulder-length auburn hair that she'd inherited from her late mother, Sarah carried herself with the careful composure of someone who had learned early that showing weakness invited attack. Her green eyes, rimmed with the kind of dark circles that came from working 3 jobs while maintaining a 4.2 GPA, held a wariness that seemed too old for her 22 years. She lived in a cramped studio apartment at 1247 Pine Street in Boulder, Colorado, where the rent ate up 60% of her income from her job at Morrison's Diner, her tutoring gig, and her weekend shifts at Target. The stakes couldn't have been higher for Sarah. This wasn't just about walking across a stage in a polyester gown. This was about proving that Linda Catherine Mitchell's daughter could achieve something that would have made her mother burst with pride. Linda had been a 3rd-grade teacher at Columbine Elementary who died of ovarian cancer when Sarah was 14, clutching her daughter's hand and whispering, "Promise me you'll go to college, baby girl. Promise me you'll be more than I ever got to be." That promise had sustained Sarah through 4 years of eating ramen noodles for dinner, studying by candlelight when the electricity got shut off, and enduring Patricia's constant reminders that not everyone is cut out for higher education. Just 18 months after Linda's death, 40-year-old David Mitchell married Patricia Hartwell in a rushed ceremony that Sarah learned about 2 days before it happened. Patricia, 36 at the time, moved into the house on Maple Street, where Sarah's mother had planted roses and hung family photos, immediately replacing Linda's pictures with her own and painting over the soft yellow walls that Linda had loved. She brought her twin 15-year-old sons, Marcus and Michael Hartwell, who seemed to view Sarah as an inconvenient obstacle to their new life of privilege. The morning of graduation dawned gray and drizzly in Boulder, matching Sarah's churning stomach. She had barely slept, partly from excitement but mostly from the gnawing anxiety that something would go wrong. Patricia had been acting strange all week, whispering phone calls that stopped when Sarah entered the room, and making cryptic comments about big announcements and perfect timing. David seemed nervous too, constantly checking his watch and avoiding eye contact with Sarah during their brief interactions. If you're feeling that familiar knot in your stomach, recognizing patterns from your own family, you're not alone. Please subscribe to hear more stories like Sarah's, and let me know in the comments if you've experienced similar family dynamics. Now let me take you back to where this story really begins. Sarah's junior year of high school was when she first realized that her stepmother's behavior wasn't just adjustment difficulties or grief. It was calculated cruelty disguised as concern. The moment that crystallized everything happened on a Tuesday evening in October 2019 when 17-year-old Sarah came home from her shift at Morrison's Diner, her black work polo reeking of grease and her feet aching from 6 hours of serving coffee to truckers and college students. She found Patricia in the kitchen, meticulously organizing college brochures into 2 distinct piles. The larger, glossy pile contained information packets from Colorado State University, University of Northern Colorado, and Colorado School of Mines. The smaller pile held community college flyers and trade school pamphlets. Sarah's stomach dropped when she realized which pile had her name written on a yellow sticky note. "Sarah, honey, we need to have a realistic conversation about your future," Patricia said, her voice dripping with the kind of false sweetness that made Sarah's skin crawl. Patricia was a handsome woman with perfectly highlighted blonde hair and the kind of figure that came from expensive personal training sessions. She worked as a real estate agent for Coldwell Banker and made sure everyone knew about her six-figure income. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, though she already knew she didn't want to hear the answer. "Well, sweetie, I know you have these big dreams about university, but we need to think practically. Your grades are good, don't get me wrong, but you're not scholarship material like Marcus and Michael." Patricia gestured toward the kitchen counter where the boys' athletic trophies were prominently displayed. "College is incredibly expensive, and with the boys needing new equipment for football and baseball, plus their college application fees, we just can't stretch the budget to cover everyone's dreams." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her GPA was 4.1, higher than either of her stepbrothers, but she was being told she wasn't scholarship material. Meanwhile, Marcus and Michael, whose grades hovered around 3.2, were already being courted by college scouts and had their pick of opportunities. "But Mom always said," Sarah began. "Your mother isn't here anymore," Patricia cut her off sharply, then immediately softened her tone. "I'm just trying to help you be realistic, Sarah. Community college is a perfectly respectable choice. You can live at home, help with Linda's baby expenses when she arrives, and maybe eventually transfer if you really apply yourself." Sarah felt her world tilt. "Linda's baby expenses?" Patricia's hand flew to her mouth in mock surprise. "Oh, I thought your father had told you. We're trying for another baby. We want to give the boys a little sibling, and your father is so excited about the possibility of having a child that's truly ours together." The phrase "truly ours" felt like a knife between Sarah's ribs. She understood the implication perfectly. Unlike Sarah, who was a reminder of David's first marriage, this potential baby would belong fully to both parents. That night, Sarah lay in her twin bed in the room that had once been her mother's sewing space, staring at the ceiling and making calculations. She would need approximately $45,000 to get through 4 years at the University of Colorado Boulder. Her current savings account held $837. She would need to work more hours, take out loans, and apply for every scholarship available. Most importantly, she would need to do it without any support from her family. The next morning, Sarah marched into the guidance office at Roosevelt High School and sat down across from Mrs. Jennifer Peterson, a kind woman in her 50s who had been trying to help Sarah navigate college planning despite the obstacles at home. "Mrs. Peterson, I need to know everything about getting financial aid when your parents won't help," Sarah said without preamble. Mrs. Peterson studied Sarah's face carefully. "Is everything all right at home, Sarah?" Sarah's throat tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "My family has made it clear that they won't be supporting my college education. I need to figure out how to do this completely on my own." Over the next hour, Mrs. Peterson walked Sarah through the FAFSA process, scholarship databases, and work-study programs. She also shared something that would change Sarah's trajectory completely. "Sarah, you have exactly the profile that the Denver Women's Foundation is looking for in their scholarship recipients. Young women who have overcome significant obstacles and are determined to succeed despite difficult circumstances. The scholarship is worth $15,000 per year, renewable for 4 years if you maintain a 3.5 GPA. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. The application process for the scholarship required 3 essays about overcoming adversity, leadership experience, and career goals. As Sarah wrote about losing her mother, taking on adult responsibilities while maintaining her grades, and her dream of becoming a social worker to help families in crisis, she felt a sense of purpose that sustained her through Patricia's increasingly passive-aggressive comments about her unrealistic expectations. The rejection letter arrived on a Thursday in March. Sarah opened it in the school parking lot, her hands shaking as she read the words, "We regret to inform you." The letter went on to explain that they had received over 2,000 applications for 50 scholarships, and while her application was impressive, they could not offer her funding at this time. Sarah sat in her beat-up Honda Civic and cried for 20 minutes, letting herself feel the full weight of disappointment and fear. When the tears stopped, she wiped her face, pulled out her phone, and started researching student loans. If her family wouldn't help and scholarships weren't enough, she would find another way. By the time Sarah graduated from high school, she had been accepted to UC Boulder, secured $12,000 in loans, saved $4,000 from working, and applied for dozens of smaller scholarships. She had also watched Patricia announce her pregnancy at Sarah's graduation party, turning what should have been a celebration of Sarah's achievements into a baby shower for Patricia's unborn child. Isn't it perfect timing? Patricia had gushed to the assembled relatives and family friends. Sarah graduating and our family getting ready to welcome a new baby. It's like God is blessing us with endings and beginnings all at once. Sarah had smiled and nodded and accepted congratulations while feeling like she was disappearing in real time. Once again, Patricia had managed to make Sarah's milestone about Patricia's life instead. College became Sarah's escape and her salvation. Her dorm room in Kittredge Hall was small and shared with a roommate who played music too loud and left dishes in the sink. But it was the first space Sarah had ever had where she didn't feel like an unwelcome guest. She threw herself into her studies with the intensity of someone who knew that education was her only path to independence. But even at college, Patricia found ways to remind Sarah of her tenuous position in the family. When Sarah made the dean's list her first semester, Patricia's congratulations came with a barb. "That's wonderful, honey. Just remember that grades aren't everything. Some people are naturally academic, and some people are more practical. Both types are important." When Sarah called home excited about landing a work-study position at the campus childcare center, Patricia's response was, "Oh, that's nice. Marcus got offered an internship at his dad's friend's law firm for the summer. Paid, of course. It's so important to network in the real world." The constant comparisons and undermining comments took their toll. Sarah found herself second-guessing every achievement and minimizing her own successes. When she was selected to present her research at a regional social work conference, she almost didn't mention it to her family because she was tired of Patricia finding ways to diminish her accomplishments. But the worst moment came during Sarah's junior year, when she came home for Christmas break to find that her childhood bedroom had been converted into a nursery for baby Linda. Her belongings had been packed into boxes and stacked in the basement. "We needed the space," Patricia explained when Sarah discovered the change. "The baby needs to be close to our room, and this was the most logical choice. We set up a nice area for you in the basement when you come home to visit." The basement area consisted of an air mattress and a card table. Sarah spent that Christmas break sleeping on the concrete floor, surrounded by boxes of her mother's belongings that had also been relegated to storage. The message was clear. Sarah was no longer a member of the household, just an occasional visitor who could be accommodated if convenient. That basement Christmas was when Sarah made a quiet resolution. She would graduate summa cum laude, land an excellent job, and build a life where no one could ever make her feel unwanted or less than again. She would show Patricia and everyone else exactly what she was capable of achieving. As graduation day approached, Sarah felt a complex mixture of pride, excitement, and sadness. She had done it. Despite working multiple jobs, taking out loans, and receiving minimal family support, she was graduating with highest honors and had already accepted a position with Jefferson County Social Services. She was ready to start her adult life on her own terms. But Patricia had one more manipulation in store. One that would finally push Sarah past her breaking point and into a moment of truth that would change everything. The morning of graduation, Sarah woke up at 5:47 a.m. with her heart hammering against her ribs. She had dreamed about her mother again, a recurring nightmare where Linda was trying to reach her through a crowd, but Sarah couldn't push through to get to her. She lay in her narrow twin bed, staring at the water stain on the ceiling of her studio apartment, and whispered the same prayer she had been saying for 8 years. "Mom, I wish you could be here to see this. By 8 a.m., Sarah was at Starbucks on the Hill, her usual pre-exam ritual, ordering a large coffee with an extra shot. Her hands were already trembling with nervous energy, and the caffeine probably wasn't helping, but she needed something to calm the butterfly storm in her stomach. The barista, a pierced sophomore named Jake, who had served her dozens of times, looked at her curiously. "Big day today, huh, Sarah?" he asked, noting her unusually neat appearance. Sarah had spent precious money on a professional blowout and a manicure. Wanting to look perfect for the photos she hoped would honor her mother's memory. "Graduation," Sarah said simply. But Jake caught the emotion in her voice. "Congratulations. Your mom would be proud." Jake had heard enough of Sarah's story during her late-night study sessions to understand the significance of this day. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them back. Today was not the day for crying. At 9:30 a.m., Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Running a little late, but we'll be there. Patricia has something special planned for after the ceremony. She's been so excited all week. Love you, kiddo." A cold feeling settled in Sarah's stomach. Patricia's special plans had never once been about celebrating Sarah. She tried to push the worry aside and focus on getting ready. The Coors Event Center was a massive concrete structure that could hold nearly 12,000 people. Sarah had attended basketball games there as a student, but seeing it set up for graduation was different. Thousands of folding chairs arranged in perfect rows, a stage decorated with the university's gold and black colors, and banners celebrating the class of 2023 hanging from the ceiling. This was really happening. Sarah found her place in the alphabetical lineup, adjusting her cap and checking that her honor cords were straight. Her fellow social work majors were buzzing with excitement and nerves. Jennifer Walsh, her study partner for the past 2 years, grabbed Sarah's arm. "Can you believe we actually made it?" Jennifer whispered. 4 years of Dr. Patterson's impossible exams, and we're actually here." Sarah smiled genuinely for the first time that morning. "My mom always said the hardest part of climbing a mountain is the last 10 feet. I think we're finally at the top." As the graduates began processing into the arena, Sarah's eyes swept the crowd looking for her family. The sight that greeted her made her stomach clench. Her father, stepmother, and stepbrothers were seated in Section B, Row 12. But something was wrong with the picture. Patricia was wearing a bright yellow dress that seemed to glow under the arena lights, and she was holding what appeared to be a small, wrapped gift box. More concerning, she kept bouncing in her seat and whispering excitedly to the people around her, including strangers who were nodding and smiling in response to whatever she was saying. David, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable in a way Sarah had never seen before. His face was pale, his tie was askew, and he kept putting his hand on Patricia's arm as if trying to calm her down. Marcus and Michael flanked their mother, both looking confused and slightly embarrassed by her animated behavior. The ceremony proceeded according to the printed program for the first 90 minutes. University President Dr. Elizabeth Chen delivered remarks about the challenges facing the graduating class. The dean of each school presented their students, and Sarah felt a surge of pride when Dean Williams spoke about the School of Social Work's commitment to social justice and family welfare. But Sarah's attention kept drifting to her family section, where Patricia's excitement seemed to be reaching a fever pitch. She was now showing the gift box to other families in nearby rows, and Sarah could see people looking confused but polite in their responses to whatever Patricia was telling them. Then came the moment Sarah had been preparing for since freshman year, her turn to address the graduating class as the student speaker for the School of Social Work. As she walked to the podium, she caught sight of her family again and was disturbed to see Patricia practically vibrating with excitement. Her phone out and apparently recording. Dean Williams. "Faculty, fellow graduates, and families," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. 4 years ago, we entered this university as individuals carrying our own dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. Today, we leave as scholars, advocates, and agents of change, ready to serve communities that need our skills and dedication. Sarah had practiced this speech dozens of times, crafting words that would honor her classmates while inspiring them to make a difference. As she spoke about resilience, service, and the importance of standing up for those who couldn't advocate for themselves, She felt her mother's presence in a way that made her voice stronger and more confident. We have learned that true strength comes not from avoiding difficult conversations or maintaining comfortable silence, but from having the courage to speak truth even when that truth is inconvenient or challenging, Sarah continued, not knowing how prophetic those words would become. She concluded with the words that meant the most to her. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us, particularly those who may not be physically present today, but whose love and sacrifice made our achievements possible. We carry their dreams forward as we build our own. The applause that followed was thunderous, and Sarah felt a moment of pure joy as she looked out at the crowd. This was her moment. She had honored her mother's memory, celebrated her achievement, and inspired her fellow graduates. For exactly 37 seconds, everything felt perfect. Then the announcer's voice cut through the applause. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special announcement from the Mitchell family." Sarah's blood turned to ice. This wasn't on the program. This wasn't planned. She watched in horror as Patricia stood up from her seat, smoothed her yellow dress, and began making her way down the aisle toward the stage. Her gift box clutched in her hands and her phone still recording everything. The arena fell silent as Patricia climbed the steps to the stage. Dean Williams looked confused, but stepped aside, clearly assuming this was some pre-arranged surprise. Sarah remained frozen at the side of the stage, every instinct screaming that something terrible was about to happen. Patricia approached the microphone with the confidence of someone who had been planning this moment for months. Her voice rang out clear and excited through the arena's sound system, reaching every one of the nearly 10,000 people in attendance. "Thank you so much for allowing me to share in this incredible day," Patricia began, her smile so wide it looked painful. "I'm Patricia Mitchell, Sarah's stepmother, and I am so incredibly proud of her accomplishment today. But I have some news that is so exciting, I just couldn't wait another moment to share it with all of you wonderful people who are celebrating this milestone with us." Sarah felt her legs go weak as she realized exactly what was about to happen. From her position at the side of the stage, she could see her father in the audience, his face now completely white and his expression one of pure horror. Clearly, whatever Patricia was about to announce was not something he had approved. Patricia's voice grew more animated with each word. "Today isn't just about celebrating Sarah's graduation. It's also the perfect opportunity to announce that the Mitchell family is about to get even bigger. That's right, everyone. After 8 wonderful years of marriage, David and I are finally pregnant with our first child together." The arena erupted in confused applause, but Sarah barely heard it over the roaring in her ears. Patricia continued, her voice now carrying a note of triumph that made Sarah's stomach turn. "We've been keeping this secret for months, waiting for just the right moment to share our joy with the world. And what could be more perfect than announcing new life at a celebration of achievement and new beginnings?" Patricia held up the gift box she had been carrying. "This little box contains the ultrasound photos of our precious baby, due in September. We wanted Sarah's graduation day to be even more special by sharing our family's wonderful news with all of you." As the applause continued, Sarah felt something break inside her chest. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't spontaneous joy. This was calculated, deliberate sabotage of her moment by a woman who couldn't stand to let Sarah have one day that wasn't about Patricia. But what Patricia said next was what pushed Sarah over the edge from hurt into rage. "I know Sarah's mother would have been so proud of her today, and I like to think that somewhere up there, Linda is celebrating not just Sarah's achievement, but the news that she's going to have another grandchild to watch over. This baby is a gift to our whole family, including Sarah, who has been such a wonderful big sister to Marcus and Michael and will be an amazing big sister to this little one too." The arena was still applauding, but Sarah could no longer hear anything except the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Patricia had just used her mother's name and memory to justify stealing Sarah's graduation moment. She had turned Linda Mitchell into a supporting character in Patricia's pregnancy announcement. As Patricia basked in the applause and began making her way back to her seat, something inside Sarah snapped. 8 years of accumulated hurt, humiliation, and suppressed anger crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. She walked back to the microphone. "I'm sorry," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the lingering applause. "I need to say something." The arena fell silent again, but this time the quality of the silence was different. People sensed that whatever was about to happen hadn't been planned, and what happened next would change not just Sarah's life, but the lives of everyone in her family, in ways that none of them could have predicted. Sarah's hand closed around the microphone with a grip so tight her knuckles went white. The arena, which moments before had been filled with the warm sound of applause for Patricia's announcement, now held a silence so complete that Sarah could hear her own pulse hammering in her ears. 10,000 people waited, sensing that whatever was about to unfold would be unforgettable. "What my stepmother just told you isn't the whole truth," Sarah began, her voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. "She said she's been keeping this pregnancy secret for the right moment to announce it. What she didn't tell you is that she's been pregnant for 4 months and deliberately chose my graduation day to make this announcement." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Patricia, who was halfway back to her seat, stopped walking and turned back toward the stage, her face beginning to show the first signs of panic. "4 months ago," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, "I came home from college unexpectedly and overheard my stepmother telling my father that this baby would be different from the other kids who came with baggage from previous marriages. She was referring to me and my stepbrothers, but apparently I'm the only one with baggage. Since Marcus and Michael have had their college educations fully funded while I've worked 3 jobs and taken out thousands in loans to pay for mine." The silence in the arena was now absolute. Sarah could see camera phones being raised throughout the crowd, and she realized dimly that this moment was being recorded by hundreds of people and would likely be online within hours. But she had passed the point where consequences mattered. "For 8 years, I have been made to feel like a guest in my own family," Sarah's voice echoed through the arena, clear and strong despite the tears beginning to stream down her face. "I have been told that my dreams weren't realistic, that college might not be for me, while my stepbrothers got new cars and athletic equipment and summer camps. When I made the dean's list, I was told that grades aren't everything. When I got this job with Jefferson County Social Services, I was told to remember that some people are cut out for helping others, and some people need to focus on helping themselves first." Sarah paused, looking directly at where her family sat. Patricia's face had gone completely white. David looked like he wanted to disappear into his seat. Marcus and Michael sat frozen, finally understanding the dynamics they had been unconsciously participating in for years. "My mother died when I was 14 years old," Sarah continued, her voice breaking slightly but pressing on. "She was a teacher who believed education could change lives. She made me promise on her deathbed that I would go to college. That promise sustained me through 4 years of eating ramen noodles for dinner, studying by candlelight when I couldn't pay the electric bill, and working until 2 a.m. most nights just to afford textbooks." The camera phones were recording everything now, and Sarah could see faculty members looking unsure about whether to intervene. But something in her expression made everyone hold back. This graduation was supposed to honor my mother's memory and celebrate the achievement that cost me everything I had to give. Instead, it's been turned into a baby shower for a woman who has spent 8 years making sure I knew I didn't really belong in her family. Sarah's voice rose as 8 years of suppressed pain came pouring out. "Do you want to know what it's like to be 14 years old and watch your father marry someone who immediately starts erasing your mother from the house you grew up in? To have your bedroom turned into a nursery without being asked? To be told you should be grateful for hand-me-downs while your step-siblings get everything new? To overhear conversations about how this new baby will be different because it will be really ours, unlike the damaged kids from previous relationships?" The arena remained dead silent, but Sarah could see people in the audience wiping their eyes. What had started as a family confrontation had become something larger, a young woman's raw testimony about feeling unwanted and unseen. "I graduated summa cum laude while working 25 hours a week," Sarah continued, her voice now steady again. "I earned this moment. I earned the right to have one day where my achievements were celebrated without being overshadowed by someone else's announcement. But even that was too much to ask for." Sarah looked directly at Patricia, who was now visibly trembling. You couldn't let me have one day, one single day where I was the center of positive attention in this family. You had to make sure that even my graduation became about you and your pregnancy, and your perfect new baby who won't have any of the baggage that I apparently bring to your family." The silence stretched for several long seconds before Sarah spoke her final words into the microphone. "My mother would have been proud of what I achieved today. She would have been devastated to see how it was stolen from me." Sarah stepped away from the microphone and walked directly off the stage, not stopping to collect her cap and gown or acknowledge the scattered, uncertain applause that began to follow her. She walked through the arena corridors and straight out to the parking lot, where she sat in her Honda Civic and finally allowed herself to completely fall apart. The tears came in waves, each one carrying a different emotion. Relief at finally saying everything she had held inside. Shame at having aired her family's dysfunction in front of thousands of strangers. Grief for her mother, who should have been there to see her daughter achieve this milestone. And finally, terror about what this moment would cost her. Sarah's phone began buzzing incessantly. Text messages from classmates who had been in the audience. Missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. Notifications that videos with titles like "Graduate exposes stepmother at graduation" were already spreading across social media platforms. But the call that made Sarah's heart sink came 23 minutes after she had left the arena. David's name appeared on her phone screen, and when she answered, his voice was barely controlled. "Sarah, what the hell did you just do?" he whispered, the pain in his voice cutting through her like a blade. "Patricia is in the bathroom throwing up. She's humiliated. The boys are confused and upset. Our entire family has been destroyed in front of 10,000 people." "Dad, she planned this," Sarah said, her own voice breaking. "She's been pregnant for months and chose today to announce it. She couldn't let me have one day that was about me. So you decided to destroy her publicly? To air our private business in front of the entire university? Sarah, I raised you better than that. Your mother raised you better than that." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Her father, the one person she had hoped would understand, was making her the villain of the story. "You raised me?" Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "Dad, you checked out 8 years ago when you married Patricia. I raised myself. I worked 3 jobs to pay for college because you decided your new family's needs came first. Patricia made it clear from day one that I was a reminder of your past, not part of your future. That's not fair, Sarah. We helped where we could. You helped Marcus and Michael with everything. Their college applications, their car payments, their equipment. You told me I needed to learn to be independent while you co-signed loans for them. Patricia got them summer internships while telling me I might not be college material." David was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was cold and distant in a way Sarah had never heard before. "Your behavior today was unforgivable. Sarah, you embarrassed Patricia, you hurt the boys, and you've damaged our family's reputation in ways that can't be repaired. I think you need to take some time to think about what kind of person you want to be. What does that mean? It means maybe you need some space from this family until you can figure out how to be an adult without blaming everyone else for your problems." The words hung in the air between them like a wall. Sarah realized that her father was essentially disowning her, choosing his new family over his biological daughter, just as he had been doing in smaller ways for 8 years. "Fine," Sarah said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "I'll take that space. But don't you ever pretend that what happened today was about me being cruel or immature. It was about me finally standing up for myself after 8 years of being treated like I didn't deserve basic respect in my own family." David hung up without another word. Sarah sat in her car for another hour, watching families stream out of the arena carrying flowers, balloons, and graduation photos. She watched parents hugging their children, taking pictures, loading up cars for celebration dinners. All around her, people were experiencing the joy that should have been hers. By evening, the videos had gone viral. Someone had posted the full audio of her speech with the title, "Graduate Destroys Manipulative Stepmother at Graduation Ceremony," and it had been viewed over 50,000 times. The comments ranged from supportive, she had every right to defend herself, to critical. This is what happens when kids have no respect, to cruel. This girl clearly has serious mental health issues, Sarah turned off her phone and spent the night staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had her degree, she had a job waiting, but she had also lost her family and become an internet sensation for all the wrong reasons. The transformation she had worked toward for 4 years was supposed to lead to a better life. Instead, everything she had known had been destroyed in less than 5 minutes at a microphone. The question that haunted her as she finally fell asleep was whether telling the truth had been worth losing everything else. 3 weeks after graduation, Sarah sat in her cramped studio apartment at 2:17 a.m., scrolling through the comments on yet another viral video of her graduation speech. This one had over 200,000 views, and the title, "Stepdaughter Destroys Narcissistic Stepmother at Graduation." The comments section had become a battlefield of opinions, family trauma stories, and surprisingly, messages of support that Sarah hadn't expected. One comment from a user named Michelle from Texas stopped her cold. "Sarah, I'm 43 years old, and I just realized I've been letting my stepmother treat me the same way for 25 years. Your speech gave me the courage to finally set boundaries. Thank you for being brave enough to speak your truth." Another from Dad of 3 Girls read, "As a father, I'm ashamed to say I recognize some of my own behavior in your dad's response. This video is making me take a hard look at how I've handled blending our family. I owe my oldest daughter some serious apologies." Sarah had been avoiding most media attention, ignoring interview requests from local news stations, and declining to respond to the dozens of messages from strangers wanting to share their own stepfamily horror stories. But these comments suggesting that her moment of breakdown had somehow helped other people began to shift her perspective on what had happened. The knock on her door at 8:30 a.m. that Tuesday morning came as a complete surprise. Sarah opened it to find Dr. Maria Rodriguez, her favorite professor from the social work program, standing in the hallway with 2 cups of coffee and a determined expression. "We need to talk," Dr. Rodriguez said simply, pushing past Sarah into the apartment. Dr. Rodriguez was a woman in her early 50s with graying hair and the kind of direct manner that came from 20 years of working with families in crisis. She had been Sarah's mentor throughout college, the professor who had encouraged her to pursue her master's degree and had written glowing recommendation letters for her job applications. "Sarah, I've been trying to reach you for weeks," Dr. Rodriguez said, settling into Sarah's only chair. "You haven't been answering calls, you missed our appointment, and frankly, I'm worried about you." Sarah felt tears threaten for the first time in days. "I'm fine, just trying to figure out what comes next." "No, you're not fine. You're isolating, which is understandable given what happened, but it's not healthy." Dr. Rodriguez pulled out her phone and showed Sarah a screenshot. "Do you know that your speech has been shared over 500,000 times across all platforms? Do you know that family therapists are using it in training sessions about recognizing emotional abuse in blended families?" Sarah looked up surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean that your moment of pain has started a conversation about family dynamics that needed to happen. I've had colleagues from across the country reach out, asking if I could connect them with you. Not for exploitation, Sarah, but because you've articulated something that thousands of young adults experience but can't put into words." Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "What happened at graduation wasn't a breakdown, Sarah. It was a breakthrough. You finally said things that needed to be said, even if the timing and venue weren't ideal." Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, like a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying suddenly became lighter. "I've been thinking it was the worst thing I could have done, that I proved I wasn't mature enough for the career I chose." "Let me ask you this," Dr. Rodriguez said. "If a client came to you with your exact situation, what would you tell them about setting boundaries with family members who consistently minimize their worth and steal their moments of triumph?" Sarah knew the answer immediately. "I would tell them that sometimes we have to choose between keeping peace and protecting our own mental health. That we can't control how others react to our boundaries, but we have a responsibility to maintain our own well-being." Exactly. And what would you say about a young person who had been systematically undermined and marginalized for 8 years finally speaking up when their most important achievement was deliberately overshadowed? I would say that speaking our truth, even imperfectly, is often healthier than continuing to accept treatment that damages our self-worth. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Sarah, you've spent 4 years learning to help families heal. Maybe it's time to apply those skills to your own healing. That conversation marked the beginning of the most transformative period of Sarah's life. Instead of wallowing in regret and shame, she began to view her graduation day confrontation as a crucial moment of self-advocacy, albeit one that had come out more dramatically than she would have preferred. The first concrete step came when Dr. Rodriguez referred Sarah to Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a family therapist who specialized in young adults navigating complex family relationships. Dr. Walsh's office was in a converted Victorian house in downtown Denver, filled with soft lighting and comfortable chairs that invited honesty. Sarah, Dr. Walsh said during their first session, I want you to understand that what happened at your graduation wasn't just an emotional outburst. It was your psyche's way of protecting itself from further harm. You had reached your breaking point, and instead of turning the pain inward, you turned it outward in a way that demanded to be heard. Through weekly therapy sessions, Sarah began to understand the patterns that had shaped her family relationships. She learned about parentification, the process by which children are forced to take on adult responsibilities prematurely. She recognized that she had been functioning as the family's emotional caretaker while being denied the support and validation that should have been freely given. Your stepmother's pregnancy announcement wasn't just poor timing, Dr. Walsh explained during their fourth session. It was what we call a power play. She waited until your moment of achievement to make an announcement that would shift all attention to her. In healthy families, parents celebrate their children's milestones without competing for attention. Sarah's work with Dr. Walsh also helped her process her grief about her mother's death. Grief that had been complicated by her father's quick remarriage and her step-family's apparent discomfort with mentions of Linda Mitchell. For the first time since her mother's death, Sarah was able to cry about her loss without feeling guilty about making others uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Sarah's new position with Jefferson County Social Services was providing daily opportunities to apply her theoretical knowledge to real situations. Her supervisor, Lisa Chen, was a 15-year veteran who had been impressed by Sarah's unusual combination of academic excellence and lived experience with complex family dynamics. Sarah, Lisa told her during their second week, you have an extraordinary ability to connect with our teenage clients. They trust you in a way that doesn't always happen immediately. I think it's because you understand what it feels like to be the outsider in a family system. Sarah was working primarily with adolescents in foster care and teens from families experiencing crisis. Time and again, she found herself sitting across from young people who felt displaced, unwanted, or caught between competing loyalties, experiences that mirrored her own in ways that were both painful and healing. One case in particular became a catalyst for Sarah's continued growth. 16-year-old Maya Rodriguez had been placed with her aunt's family after her mother's drug addiction made their home unsafe. Maya's aunt meant well, but had made it clear that Maya's presence was straining their family resources. The teenager was excelling academically, but struggling with feeling like an unwanted burden. I just don't understand why I have to be grateful all the time, Maya said during one of their sessions, her voice sharp with frustration. I didn't ask for any of this, but everyone acts like I should be thankful that they're putting up with me. Sarah felt a jolt of recognition, so strong it was almost physical. Maya, you have a right to feel wanted and valued, not just tolerated. Gratitude shouldn't be the price of basic acceptance in a family. As Sarah worked with Maya and other clients, she began to see how her own experiences had given her unique insight into the emotional needs of young people in difficult family situations. Her colleagues started referring their most challenging cases to her, noting her ability to build rapport quickly and help teens articulate feelings they had struggled to express. But the real turning point came 4 months after graduation when Sarah received an unexpected phone call that would change everything. The caller identified herself as Dr. Rebecca Morrison, a family therapist from Seattle who had seen Sarah's graduation video and had a proposition. Sarah, I know this might sound strange, but your speech has been circulating among family therapy professionals across the country. Would you be interested in speaking at our upcoming conference about blended family dynamics? We've had requests from therapists who want to understand how to better support young adults who have experienced what you described. Sarah's first instinct was to decline. The idea of standing in front of professional therapists and talking about her family trauma felt overwhelming and potentially humiliating. But something Dr. Walsh had said during their last session echoed in her mind. Sometimes our greatest wounds become our greatest gifts to others. What would you want me to talk about? Sarah asked. Your perspective on what it's really like to be a young person navigating a blended family where you don't feel truly accepted. Most of our training focuses on helping parents blend families successfully, but we don't hear enough from the children's perspective, especially when things go wrong. Sarah took 3 days to think about it. She talked it over with Dr. Walsh, who was enthusiastic about the opportunity. She discussed it with Dr. Rodriguez, who reminded her that social workers have a responsibility to share knowledge that could help others. Most importantly, she thought about Maya and her other clients who were struggling with similar feelings of displacement and unworthiness. I'll do it, Sarah finally told Dr. Morrison. But I want to make it clear that this isn't about demonizing step-parents or blended families. It's about recognizing when family dynamics become harmful and learning how to advocate for young people who are struggling. Sarah's first speaking engagement was at the Pacific Northwest Family Therapy Conference in October 2023, 6 months after her graduation. Standing before an audience of 200 mental health professionals, Sarah felt her mother's presence in a way that gave her strength. 6 months ago, I made what many people considered a terrible mistake, Sarah began. I aired my family's private business in front of thousands of people at my college graduation. What I've learned since then is that sometimes our most imperfect moments become the catalysts for our most important growth, not just for ourselves, but for others who need to hear that their experiences are valid. The response was immediate and overwhelming. During the Q&A session, therapists shared stories of clients who had experienced similar dynamics but hadn't been able to articulate their feelings. Several approached Sarah afterward to ask if she would consider developing resources for young adults in blended families. One therapist, Dr. James Patterson from Portland, told Sarah, "I've been working with families for 15 years, and your presentation gave me insights into the teenage perspective that I've never had before. I have 3 clients right now who could benefit from hearing that their feelings about their stepfamilies are normal and valid." The success of that first presentation led to more speaking opportunities. By December, Sarah had addressed audiences in 5 different states, sharing her story and the insights she had gained about healthy versus unhealthy family dynamics. Each presentation was different, tailored to the specific audience. But the core message remained the same. Young people in blended families have a right to feel valued and respected. And speaking up about harmful dynamics isn't disloyalty. It's self-preservation. But perhaps the most unexpected development was the email Sarah received in January from someone who signed simply as M. Mitchell. "Sarah, this is your stepbrother Marcus. I know you probably don't want to hear from any of us, but I need to tell you something. Michael and I have been watching the videos of your speeches, and we realized that we were part of the problem for 8 years. We saw what Mom was doing to you, and we stayed quiet because it benefited us. That wasn't okay, and we're sorry. Would you be willing to meet with us? There are things about the family situation that you need to know." Sarah stared at the email for 20 minutes before responding. The family she thought she had lost forever was reaching out, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to open that door again. The answer to that question would determine not just her future relationship with her family, but the next phase of her transformation from victim to advocate to something even more powerful. 8 months after graduation, Sarah stood in the lobby of the Marriott Denver downtown, adjusting the microphone clipped to her navy blue blazer. In 15 minutes, she would deliver the keynote address to the Colorado Family Therapy Association's annual conference, speaking to an audience of over 400 mental health professionals. The 23-year-old who had once questioned her own worth was now being paid $5,000 to share her expertise on blended family dynamics. But first, she had a phone call to return. Marcus had been texting her all morning, and his messages had an urgency that made her stomach clench with worry. "Sarah, thank God you called." Marcus's voice was strained when he picked up. "We need to tell you what's been happening since your speech went viral. It's bad. For Patricia, I mean." Sarah found a quiet corner of the lobby and sat down. "What do you mean?" "Her real estate license is under review. Apparently, several of her clients saw the graduation video and filed complaints about her professionalism and character. Her brokerage firm put her on administrative leave last month while they conduct an internal investigation." Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. She hadn't intended for her graduation outburst to damage Patricia's career, but she couldn't deny a small sense of satisfaction that there were finally consequences for Patricia's behavior. "There's more," Marcus continued. "Dad moved out 3 weeks ago. He's staying at that extended stay hotel on South Colorado Boulevard. He says he needs space to think, but honestly, Sarah, I think he's finally seeing Patricia clearly for the first time." "How is she handling all of this?" "Not well. She's been posting constantly on Facebook about family loyalty and ungrateful stepchildren. She shared an article about toxic young adults who manipulate situations for attention and tagged it with Eastern truth. But it's backfiring. People who know our family are commenting with support for you, and some are sharing their own step-family horror stories." Sarah absorbed this information, realizing that Patricia's downfall was largely self-inflicted. Instead of acknowledging any responsibility for the family dynamics, she had doubled down on her victim narrative, which only made her look worse to people who had witnessed Sarah's graduation speech. "Marcus, I never wanted to destroy anyone's life. I just wanted to be heard. Sarah, you didn't destroy anything. You exposed something that was already broken. Michael and I have been talking to Dad, and he's admitted things we never knew, like how Patricia convinced him not to help you with college because it would enable dependence. How she insisted on announcing her pregnancy at your graduation because she was jealous of the attention you were getting. This revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Patricia hadn't just been thoughtless or selfish. She had been actively sabotaging Sarah's relationship with her father for years. "Dad wants to see you," Marcus added quietly. "He's been going to therapy. Dr. Walsh referred him to someone. He says he has a lot to apologize for, and he understands if you're not ready, but he wants you to know that he finally sees how badly he failed you." Sarah looked at her watch. She had 10 minutes before her presentation. "I can't deal with this right now, Marcus. I have a speech to give. Can we talk about this later?" "Of course." "But Sarah, I'm proud of you. What you're doing, helping other families avoid what ours went through, it's important. Mom's actions have consequences now because you were brave enough to speak up." Sarah ended the call and took several deep breaths, centering herself for the presentation ahead. As she walked toward the conference room, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in less than a year. The broken young woman who had grabbed a microphone in desperation had become someone who commanded respect and substantial speaking fees. Her presentation, titled "Beyond Gratitude, Supporting Young Adults in Complex Family Transitions," was met with a standing ovation. During the Q&A session, a therapist from Colorado Springs asked the question that had become increasingly common at Sarah's speaking engagements. "Sarah, your story has clearly resonated with thousands of people, but it's also sparked some controversy. How do you respond to critics who say you could have handled the situation more privately?" Sarah had heard this question dozens of times, and her response had become more refined and confident with each telling. "I spent 8 years trying to handle things privately. I had countless conversations with my father about Patricia's behavior. I tried to be the bigger person and ignore the favoritism and undermining comments. Private approaches work when all parties are willing to acknowledge problems and change behavior. When one person consistently refuses to recognize their impact on others, sometimes public truth-telling becomes necessary for self-preservation." She paused, looking out at the audience of professionals who worked with families in crisis every day. "I'm not advocating for public confrontation as a first resort, but I am saying that young people shouldn't be expected to protect adults from the consequences of their own harmful behavior indefinitely." After her presentation, Sarah was approached by Dr. Amanda Foster, a family therapist from Fort Collins, who had a proposition that would change Sarah's trajectory yet again. "Sarah, have you ever considered writing a book about your experience? I think your story, combined with your professional insights, could help thousands of young adults who are struggling with similar family dynamics. The idea intrigued Sarah, but she felt uncertain about her ability to write a full-length book. Dr. Foster introduced her to literary agent Jennifer Park, who was attending the conference specifically to hear Sarah speak. "I've been following your story since the graduation video went viral," Jennifer explained over coffee after the conference. "What you've done, transforming personal trauma into professional expertise and public advocacy, is exactly the kind of story publishers are looking for. You're not just sharing your pain, you're offering practical solutions and hope for recovery." Within 6 weeks, Sarah had a book deal with Harmony Books for a 6-figure advance. The book, tentatively titled Finding Your Voice, A Guide to Healing in Complex Families, would combine Sarah's personal story with professional insights and practical advice for young adults navigating difficult family relationships. But the most significant development in Sarah's new reality came in March, when she received an unexpected visitor at her new apartment in downtown Denver. Sarah had used part of her book advance to move into a 1-bedroom apartment with actual windows and a kitchen that wasn't also her living room. The knock on her doctor at 7 p.m. on a Tuesday evening revealed her father standing in the hallway, looking more fragile than she had ever seen him. David Mitchell had lost at least 20 pounds since graduation day. His hair had gone almost completely gray, and his eyes held the kind of exhaustion that comes from months of difficult self-reflection. "Hi, kiddo," he said quietly, using the nickname he hadn't called her in years. "I know I don't have the right to just show up, but I was hoping we could talk." Sarah studied her father's face for a long moment before stepping aside to let him in. They sat at her small kitchen table, the same table where she had eaten countless meals alone while working her way through college, and began the hardest conversation of both their lives. "Sarah, I need to tell you some things, and I need you to know that I don't expect forgiveness," David began. "I've been in therapy for 4 months, and I'm finally understanding how badly I failed you. Not just at graduation, but for 8 years before that." Over the next 2 hours, David shared revelations that were both validating and heartbreaking for Sarah to hear. He admitted that Patricia had systematically poisoned his relationship with Sarah through years of subtle manipulation and undermining comments. He acknowledged that he had chosen the path of least resistance, allowing Patricia to make decisions about Sarah's treatment because it was easier than confronting his wife's behavior. Most importantly, he revealed the extent to which Patricia had actively sabotaged Sarah's opportunities and achievements. "She convinced me not to co-sign your college loans because she said it would make you too dependent," David admitted, his voice thick with regret. "She talked me out of helping with your car payments because she said you needed to learn responsibility. Every time I wanted to support you more, she had an argument for why it wouldn't be good for you." Sarah felt a mix of vindication and sadness as she listened to her father finally acknowledge what she had experienced. "Dad, I tried to tell you what was happening. I tried to get you to see how differently she treated me compared to Marcus and Michael." "I know." "God, Sarah, I know. I was so afraid of having another failed marriage that I ignored your needs to keep Patricia happy. I told myself that you were resilient and that the boys needed more attention because they'd been through trauma with their father's death. But the truth is, I was a coward who chose the easy path instead of protecting his daughter." David went on to explain that his marriage to Patricia was over, though they hadn't filed for divorce yet because of complications with baby Linda, who was now 14 months old. "I can't be married to someone who spent 8 years undermining my relationship with my daughter. I can't raise Linda in a home where manipulation and favoritism are normalized." "What about Linda?" Sarah asked, realizing she was genuinely concerned about her half-sister's well-being. "She's the one thing keeping me from filing for divorce immediately. Patricia is struggling with postpartum depression and her career situation, and I'm worried about Linda's stability. But I also can't pretend our marriage is salvageable." They talked until nearly midnight, covering 8 years of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. David apologized repeatedly and specifically for his failures as a father and his role in creating the toxic family dynamic that had ultimately exploded at Sarah's graduation. By the end of the conversation, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope for a genuine relationship with her father. Not the relationship they'd had before, which had been built on her willingness to accept less than she deserved, but a new relationship based on mutual respect and his commitment to making amends. 3 months later, Sarah stood in a very different arena than the one where her transformation had begun. She was delivering the commencement address at Metro State University, speaking to a graduating class that included dozens of first-generation college students and young adults who had overcome significant obstacles to earn their degrees. 18 months ago, I stood on a graduation stage and did something that many people considered inappropriate and destructive, Sarah told the audience of graduates and their families. I spoke a truth that had been silenced for too long, in a way that was messy and imperfect, but ultimately necessary for my own healing. She looked out at the sea of faces, many of them young people who had likely experienced their own family struggles and moments of feeling unsupported or misunderstood. What I learned from that experience is that our most difficult moments often contain the seeds of our greatest growth. Speaking your truth, even when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable for others, is not selfish. It's essential. You have a right to be heard, respected, and valued for who you are, not just tolerated for who others want you to be. The standing ovation that followed lasted nearly 5 minutes. But more importantly, Sarah felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that her story was helping other young people find their own voices and advocate for their own worth. As she left the stage that day, Sarah reflected on the journey from that devastating graduation confrontation to this moment of triumph. The young woman who had once questioned whether she deserved basic respect had become someone who could help others recognize their own value and fight for the treatment they deserved. The transformation was complete, but the impact was just beginning. 2 years after her graduation day confrontation, Sarah Mitchell stood in the green room of the Today Show in New York City, checking her appearance one final time before what would be the most significant media appearance of her rapidly ascending career. Her book, Finding Your Voice, A Guide to Healing in Complex Families, had been on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 consecutive weeks. And she was about to discuss it with millions of viewers across the country. The 24-year-old woman looking back at her from the mirror bore little resemblance to the uncertain college student who had worked 3 jobs just to afford textbooks. Sarah's auburn hair was professionally styled. She wore a tailored burgundy suit that had cost more than her monthly rent used to be. And most importantly, her green eyes held a confidence and peace that had been hard-won through 2 years of intensive therapy. Professional success and personal growth, Sarah. You're on in 2 minutes, the production assistant called through the door. As Sarah walked toward the studio, she thought about the phone call she'd received that morning from Marcus. Baby Linda, now 2.5 years old, had taken her first steps the day before and had immediately toddled over to the framed photo of Sarah that Marcus kept on his coffee table, pointing at it and saying, "Sissy." The relationship with Linda had become one of the unexpected joys of Sarah's new life. After David and Patricia's divorce was finalized 8 months earlier, David had won joint custody, and Sarah had begun spending regular time with her half-sister. Linda was a bright, affectionate child who called Sarah Sissy and seemed to intuitively understand that Sarah was someone special in her life. Our next guest's story began with what seemed like a moment of family destruction at her college graduation, host Hoda Kotb was saying as Sarah took her seat on the famous orange couch. But Sarah Mitchell turned that painful experience into a career helping other young adults navigate complex family relationships. Her book, Finding Your Voice, has resonated with hundreds of thousands of readers. Sarah, welcome to the show. Sarah smiled, feeling completely at ease in a way that would have been unimaginable 2 years earlier. Thank you for having me, Hoda. It's an honor to be here. Let's start with that graduation day. When you grabbed that microphone, did you have any idea you were about to change not just your own life, but potentially thousands of other lives? Absolutely not, Sarah laughed. In that moment, I was just a young woman who had reached her breaking point. I had spent 8 years being told that my feelings didn't matter, that my achievements weren't worth celebrating, and that I should be grateful for treatment that was actually quite harmful. When my stepmother chose my graduation day to announce her pregnancy and steal my moment of triumph, something inside me finally said, "Enough." Hoda leaned forward with interest. "Your book talks about the difference between family loyalty and family toxicity. Can you explain that distinction?" Sarah had answered this question hundreds of times in interviews and speaking engagements, but she still felt passionate about clarifying this crucial point. Real family loyalty means wanting what's best for each other's growth and well-being, even when that growth is uncomfortable or challenges existing dynamics. Toxic family loyalty demands that we sacrifice our own mental health to maintain others' comfort and avoid difficult conversations. She paused, looking directly into the camera. "I spent years believing that speaking up about my stepmother's behavior would be disloyal to my family. What I learned is that enabling harmful behavior isn't loyalty, it's complicity. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for a family system is refuse to participate in dysfunction." The interview continued for 12 minutes, covering Sarah's transformation from a struggling college student to a best-selling author and sought-after speaker. Hoda asked about Sarah's current relationship with her family, and Sarah was able to share genuinely positive updates. "My relationship with my father has been rebuilt from the ground up," Sarah explained. "It took him getting his own therapy and doing serious work to understand how his choices had affected me. But today, we have the kind of relationship I always hoped we could have, one based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and guilt." "And your stepmother?" "Patricia and I don't have a relationship, and that's okay. Not every family story ends with everyone reconciling and becoming close. Sometimes the healthy ending is learning to build a good life despite ongoing family challenges. I hold no animosity toward her, but I also don't allow her behavior to affect my peace of mind anymore." After the interview, Sarah took a taxi to her hotel room overlooking Central Park, where she had an afternoon conference call with her editor about her second book proposal. The success of her first book had led to a 2-book contract worth 7 figures, and Sarah was planning to expand her focus to include workplace dynamics and professional boundary setting. But the call that meant the most to her came that evening from Dr. Maria Rodriguez, her former professor who had become both a mentor and close friend. "Sarah, I just watched your interview," Dr. Rodriguez said, her voice warm with pride. "Do you realize what you've accomplished? You've turned your personal trauma into a platform that's helping thousands of people heal their own family relationships." Sarah looked out at the twinkling lights of Manhattan and reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it myself. 2 years ago, I was a broke college student who felt like she didn't belong anywhere. Now I have a career I love, financial security I never imagined possible, and the ability to help people in ways I never dreamed of. What do you think your mother would say if she could see you now?" Dr. Rodriguez asked gently. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but they were tears of joy rather than grief. "I think she would be proud that I kept my promise to her about education. But more than that, I think she would be proud that I found the courage to use my voice to help other people find theirs." The numbers told the story of Sarah's impact in ways that still amazed her. Her book had sold over 300,000 copies in its first year. Her nonprofit organization, Finding Your Voice Foundation, had provided resources and support to over 15,000 young adults navigating complex family relationships. She had spoken at conferences in 12 countries and had been featured in major media outlets from CNN to the BBC. But perhaps more meaningful were the individual stories she received daily through social media and email. Messages from young people who had found the courage to set boundaries with toxic family members. Letters from parents who had recognized their own harmful behaviors and were working to repair relationships with their children. Stories from therapists who were using Sarah's insights to better support their clients. One message that particularly moved her had come from a young woman named Ashley in Oregon. "Sarah, I'm 19 years old, and I've been living with my stepmother's emotional abuse for 6 years. Your graduation speech gave me the courage to have an honest conversation with my father about what I've been experiencing. For the first time, he listened without defending her, and he's gotten us both into family therapy. I don't know how our story will end, but I know it's going to be different because you showed me that my voice matters." Sarah's romantic life had also transformed in ways she hadn't expected. 6 months earlier, she had met David Chen, a family law attorney who specialized in helping families navigate complex custody situations. They had met at a conference where they were both speaking, and their shared commitment to family welfare had sparked both professional collaboration and personal attraction. David understood Sarah's work schedule and supported her mission without trying to overshadow her success. He was secure enough in his own career to celebrate her achievements genuinely, and he brought a sense of stability and partnership that Sarah had never experienced in a romantic relationship. "You know what I love most about your story?" David had told her recently over dinner at their favorite restaurant in Denver. "You didn't just survive your difficult family situation, you transformed it into something that helps thousands of other people. You took your pain and turned it into purpose." As Sarah's plane descended into Denver International Airport the next evening, she looked out at the lights of the city she now called home and felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. She was returning to a life she had built entirely on her own terms, surrounded by people who valued and respected her, doing work that felt meaningful and important. The next morning, Sarah had breakfast with Marcus, Michael, and Linda at a cafe near her downtown apartment. Watching her half-sister toddle around the restaurant, charming other diners with her bright smile and infectious giggle, Sarah felt protective and hopeful about the kind of family environment Linda was growing up in. "Dad's been asking when you might be ready for a Sunday dinner," Marcus mentioned, as Linda climbed into Sarah's lap with a piece of banana bread. "He's been working really hard in therapy, and I think he wants to establish some new family traditions that include everyone." Sarah considered this. The relationship with David was still rebuilding, but it was built on a much healthier foundation than their previous dynamic. He had done the work to understand his past failures and was committed to being a better father going forward. "Maybe," Sarah said, bouncing Linda gently on her knee. "I think I might be ready for that." As she spoke, Sarah realized that her transformation was complete in ways she had never imagined possible. The young woman who had once felt like an unwanted outsider in her own family had become someone who could set the terms for how she wanted to be treated. She had built a successful career, written a best-selling book, found love with someone who supported her dreams, and most importantly, she had found peace with her own story. The graduation day confrontation that had seemed like a moment of destruction had actually been a moment of liberation. By refusing to accept poor treatment any longer, Sarah had not only freed herself from a toxic family dynamic, but had also created space for healthier relationships to develop. Her story had become proof that sometimes the most important thing we can do is grab the microphone, literally or metaphorically, and trust that our authentic voice matters more than perfect delivery. That speaking truth, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient for others, can be the beginning of transformation, not just for ourselves, but for everyone whose lives we touch. As Sarah looked around the cafe at her brothers and her baby sister, at the life she had built from the ashes of that devastating graduation day, she felt her mother's presence in a way that filled her with warmth and pride. She had kept her promise to Linda Mitchell about getting an education. But more than that, she had honored her mother's memory by becoming someone who stood up for herself and helped others do the same. The girl who had once wondered if she deserved to be heard had become a woman whose voice was changing lives around the world. And this was just the beginning. Sarah's story reminds us that our most painful experiences often contain the seeds of our greatest contributions to the world. It shows us that speaking our truth, even when it comes out imperfectly, can be more powerful than maintaining comfortable silence. Most importantly, it demonstrates that we always have the power to write new chapters in our lives, regardless of how the earlier chapters unfolded. If Sarah's journey resonates with you, or if you've experienced similar challenges in your own family relationships, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please subscribe to our channel for more stories of transformation and resilience. And remember that your voice matters, your experiences are valid, and your healing can become a source of strength, not just for yourself, but for countless others who need to hear that they're not alone. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey of courage, growth, and the power of finding your authentic voice.